Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Live with Liz. Oh, what a week. Today it's equal pay day, right? I love equal pay day. Hope we can all get equal pay. After Live with Liz today, about 15 minutes later, there's going to be an event for Women's IP Today. And if you need the link, just send us a DM and we'll send it to you to join Women's IP Today and focus on equal pay day. But in the meantime, on Live with Liz today, you know how we always focus on or often focus on ways to promote your firm and your practice areas and to get more visibility. Today, we're looking at another method of doing that. We're talking about webinars and workshops. And these are two brilliant ways to extend your reach and to create content that has a longer shelf life. It's funny that we say shelf life when everything is digital now. Okay, so digital shelf life. To promote your firm and your practice areas and to get your expertise out there, to build your credibility, to have another channel to talk to people, and to extend that reach much farther to potential clients and to other players in the industry who are relevant. Webinars and workshops nowadays, especially as we cannot gather in person, offer near perfect ways of doing that. And let's see, I have some comments. Good morning, Mariana and Leah. It's so nice to see you. I love that you join me almost every week. You're my champions. Hey, Rachel. Oh, you made it today. That's awesome. Okay, so webinars and workshops are sometimes referred to interchangeably, which is not correct. They are different types of events, and they are events, but they're hosted online. Workshops, of course, can be in person as well. And one of the things that distinguishes the two, aside from the length of time, because a webinar is shorter, in best practice, a webinar should be about 45 minutes, maybe even half an hour. I'm a fan of a shorter webinar to allow for a little bit of extra time at the end to have questions or to interject throughout so that it's not just, you know, monotonous talking that drags on, you know, kind of like I do every Wednesday to you guys. And hi, Mira, nice to see you here. There are differences with the workshop that they are often longer, usually about 90 minutes to start, but they can even be 3 and 4 hours. Workshops are more interactive. They're meant to be. They're meant to include some sort of element of participation by the people who attend. And that is really what distinguishes the two, is aside from the length of time, that interactivity. Webinars can still include some interactivity, but they're generally meant to be shorter form, informative pieces that have that longer shelf life. And unlike a workshop, which you usually would not download because you'll lose the interactivity from it, a webinar can be stored on your website. It can be shared on online channels. It can be stored in other medium through publishers or educational channels, learning management systems, where it's available to download from the audience interested in you or interested in your topic or interested in your guests. So that's really the distinction between a webinar and a workshop. And I really promote both, and I put them both together because of the fact that people often just refer to them as being one and the same, or they host an extra long webinar and then call it a workshop just because of the length. That's not really what does it. So I'm a huge fan of both of these methods, but they do take proper planning and organization in order to achieve successful execution and to make the most of them. There are a lot of different ways that you can do this whole activity of promoting your webinar, of pulling it off with ease and expertise. So when you're doing it in your firm, if you're a smaller firm, you may not have all of the different steps that a larger firm or even a mid-sized firm would have to go through to keep that organization and to make the most of it. And there are people who can help you do this. Firm Forward offers a service where not only do we organize and execute, but we also offer hosting and moderation services. These services are also offered through advertisers in your industries that you're serving or in in the practice area. So a lot of times there are intellectual property advertisers out there, or publishers or media companies that will offer you the opportunity to host a webinar or even sponsor one that maybe looks a little bit different than actually participating in it as a speaker when you sponsor it. But there are a lot of different options out there for making best use of a webinar. Now, one of the things I love about webinars and workshops is that reach, is that not only do you send this invitation out to your current clients and the people on your mailing list, but you promote it all over the place, and you have an ability then to touch people and get people involved who are not your direct contacts, who don't necessarily know you already. And in the times of COVID where we just can't get together, this is crucial to be able to do that in a way that is effective, in a way that introduces you to a newer audience and that really gets you out there. And this is a format that lets you do that, whereas a lot of others don't, even sometimes participating in conferences. This is a much more personal experience. It's intimate, you're closer to it. There are also opportunities when you're hosting a workshop or a webinar to get you closer to industry experts and to your clients. And you can really honor your clients by including them as guest stars or participants or panelists in whatever format you're promoting for your webinar or your workshop. And then when you do that, when you bring in maybe a corporate client or an industry player or someone from government, when you bring those people in, you also end up getting access to their audiences, which generally include people who you are interested in connecting with. So a lot of positive things about just putting these together and executing them well and getting in front of the people you need to meet. Now, that planning process, how does it work? Well, of course, you have to have the tools in place to pull these off. And there is a lot of competition right now for these video platforms and for webinar platforms. There are different price points for them and different functionality for them. I think one of the most widely used and easiest to adopt is Zoom. I know that some law firms are concerned about the security. I am no longer concerned about that. You can look up the different security measures that they've taken throughout the past year and a half or so in response often to security issues that have arisen. And there are other platforms out there that were even slower to adapt to these, but there are other functional programs out there that are easy to use. Many, like GoToWebinar is one of the classic ones. There are event ones that are available through different hosts, and there are even proprietary ones that are out there. So a lot of different options. You just need to choose the one that's right for you. And when you do, you want to consider its ease of access. Do people have to download software, or do they have the ability to hop on through their browser? Fan of the latter, you definitely want to make it easy for the users to be able to join you. Is it easy to set up in terms of being able to invite people? Does it integrate with your mailing list or your marketing automation or your CRM? That integration can be important, but it might not be a deal breaker. So a lot of things to consider just with choosing your platform. Let's say your platform is already there, you're ready to go, you know you're going to plan the webinars. How does that look from the day-to-day planning in your office to actually getting the panel together? Well, there's pre-planning involved. You want to think about the different topics. And when you're putting together your marketing plan for the year or your content development plan, webinar is content. So this would be included in that. And you want to think holistically about where your firm is going, which practice areas you want to promote, which players in your firm have the ability to connect with an audience or have the right connections to put together a stellar panel that can shine and highlight your areas of expertise. Those are things you want to think about in terms of when you want to do these webinars throughout the year. What other content is going on? Are you planning on traveling at all? Hopefully we'll all get to travel later this year. But in the meantime, as we all stay at home, what other efforts are you making? Are you doing events virtually where a webinar might complement the expertise that you want to highlight at the event? In that case, you might want to plan that webinar to happen either a week or two after the event or just before. The benefit of doing it after the event is that during the event, when you meet people virtually, you can promote that webinar and say, actually, this is one of our areas of expertise, and we're actually hosting a webinar in a couple of weeks. You should join us. I'll send you an email. And that's just part of, the opportunity that you get when you're doing a webinar. There are other things that you can do to organize these in your firm. I'm the fan of the sign-up sheet or the form to request a webinar from the point of contact at your firm who's managing it. You must have someone in charge. Someone has to be in control of what happens, selecting the date, making sure everyone's in the right place, making sure people plan ahead of time, put together any tools that you're going to use, any reports, any slides, any resources that are going to be shared during the webinar need to be available well in advance so that when it comes to the day of, you're not fumbling through the technology and making sure that you can share it. You already know how it's going to go. You've already tested it. You have to practice these things. Don't just wing it. Don't just show up the day of and say, oh, I'm an expert in this. We can go ahead. Practice, practice, practice. It is important. It will make a difference in your final product. And remember that you want these to be long lasting and you want to download them. You want people to download them when they visit your website or when they access your data bank. Now, in addition to that pre-planning, you have to think about how you're connecting with the audience and where you're promoting it. And so your point of contact at your firm, or if you're hiring someone like Firm Forward to help you out with it, that person, in some cases us, we go ahead and figure out which channels are available to you and should be the ones chosen to promote your webinar. You want to plan these out about 3 weeks in advance for a webinar, sometimes a little bit longer, not with your active promotion, but perhaps you list it in an events calendar, perhaps you're sending it in an email where you're just making an announcement like a save the date. But about 3 weeks in advance, you want to make sure that the registration is open up and that you're monitoring that registration process and making sure that you are announcing the webinar or even doing a paid promotion, a paid campaign perhaps on LinkedIn, which I found to be directly effective for the webinars that we've participated in hosting or that we've hosted directly. Definitely your other social media channels can be an avenue for that. Or even if you're not using one of the media companies to actually host the webinar with you, you could invest in advertising your webinars or your workshops or programs through those media partners to get even further reach. And that is one way that can be more economical to reach your audience and intended audience, rather than just doing the complete hosting through one of these media companies. But whichever way you go, you need to plan in advance to do that. And I say start at about 3 weeks and have your whole plan of how you're going to promote it beforehand. And once your people register, you've got all of your people, attendees ready to go, you need to make sure that you're communicating with them as well. You need to email them their confirmations, make sure they know what to expect, make sure people know how to access your event on the day that it's being conducted. And like you're doing that ahead of time, you also have to do that with the follow-up. So when you're finished with the webinar, you're not done. This, again, has that longer shelf life. So right when it's over, of course, you're going to reach out to the people who attended that to thank them, to ask if they have any questions. And then you'll also reach out to the people who missed it and say, hey, we're sorry you missed us, but here's a link to download the webinar or to view it online. We'd love to have your feedback on it, and use that as a way to interact with them. Don't just send that email and forget about them in the future. This is a way to continue that communication with them, or maybe even set a meeting to see why they were interested in the first place and make continued use of this resource that you've developed. Yeah. A lot of firms can make excellent use of this and invest in these as advertising tools. I recently got asked a question about how do you sell your services of your firm and get the content that's valuable out there in these mediums. Well, what you have to sell, so good that you're even thinking about it. Kudos, Brian. And you have to actually plan for that. So we are fans of the 80-20 rule, which is a pretty simple way to think about it, but 80% high value to the audience, 20% selling. This is maybe just a good rule of thumb. It doesn't have to be exact, but make sure that you have a call to action. Your call to action when you're promoting the webinar is to get people to register. When it's over, you want people to look at that webinar as a resource, and you can use that as a lead magnet on your website. You can use that to communicate further down the line with people. You can use that. You can throw it on LinkedIn and say, hey, we did this. You can revisit it later and do an update. So You can take the webinar apart and create lots of different smaller content that you can use throughout the year to promote your firm and your practice areas. A lot that you can do with all of this. But you still want to make sure that you're capturing it. So whatever your sales aspect is and whatever your practice area is, you need to make sure that you're connecting your firm and that service with the audience so that they know that they can hire you to help handle whatever it is you are discussing in the subject matter of the webinar or workshop itself. And one other thing, I know we're going a little over time here, so people load up on your coffee and stick with me for a minute. You can monetize these. That's right. You're looking for another channel of revenue, you can actually get people to sign up for these workshops and pay to attend them. That's right. Actually, that's all I wanted to add. So we're only over by a tad. And thanks for joining me on Live with Liz. Again, we have that Equal Pay Day with Women's IP today. I hope you'll be able to join us for that in about 15 minutes. I look forward to seeing everybody there and next Wednesday on Live with Liz. Take care, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Bye for now.